very much, Les Caller. And first of all, I'd like to thank our Whip, Deputy Matthew McGrath, and the people in his office, David and Maureen, for the preparatory work that they did in bringing forward this very important motion before the Dáil this evening, because I suppose each and every one of us, from political parties and none, we are all dealing with one issue that is the same to each and every one of us. That is the people who are affected by what I would call the crisis that has not gone away. Because when people talk about the recovery and the economic recovery, there may have been an economic recovery for some, but there are many other people who are really in trouble. And as late as today, I had 3 what I would call new cases of people who are in serious financial difficulty. The categories of people that I'm talking about are homeowners who are talking about their family homes, small business people. It could be a person with a small shop, a small struggling business, a small publican, and perhaps a farmer who tried expanding and borrowed money, Minister, to try and better themselves and better their output and make their business sustainable. Now, these are the very people that we as politicians should be doing everything that we can do to protect them. We should be doing everything possible to try and help their best interests and to carry them on into the future. I always remember going back many years ago when some people might have thought that it was like some planners and people trying to stop people living in the countryside, and they were condemning the practice of a farmer perhaps selling a site at a certain time during their life. But the funny thing about it is, Minister, when a farmer sold a site off of the family farm, maybe a thing that he or she did not want to do, but the fact of selling that site, it might have sustained that family business, that small farming unit. It might have sustained it and made it more viable for the years ahead, in that they could have bettered themselves by building sheds, putting up a slatted tank, improving the rest of the farm by selling off a half acre, and it was bringing people into the rural community. It was helping that business at a critical time in life. I believe that this motion and the trust of it, Lascion Collar, is trying to help these people and protect them from vulture funds. And we see the same thing happening whereby when properties become available now, we have hundreds of units being sold to big groups of investors, indeed foreign investors. We're going to regret that yet. We're driving the people involved in private rental accommodation. We're driving them out of the business that they're at, and they're only trying to better themselves and make a living also. People that might have 2 or 3 or 4 units or one for rent, they're not going to keep at that business when we see some of the proposals that are brought forward by other members of this House, where they're trying to criminalise those type of people. And what we're going to finish up with is systems whereby people will be renting accommodation from people who possess maybe 500 or 1,000 units, and where they can create a monopoly in the market and increase rents to whatever the price they like. And we will rue the day, and we will regret the day that we will allow that to happen. Equally with the vulture funds, and I've been very worried for a long period of time over the Taoiseach's comments that he has made with regard to vulture funds and their activities and the way they endanger in particularly young couples or middle-aged couples who have a mortgage on their properties. But I'm not surprised, and the reason I'm not surprised is because when I look at anybody and when I judge their ability to make good decisions, I have to look at what they've done themselves. And I hate talking about somebody when they're not here. I'd actually much prefer if the Taoiseach was here when I'd say this. But the Taoiseach's own life experiences with regard to business or lack of it, and when I look at government ministers and when I look at people in charge, I look at what have they done themselves in their lives. Have they paid a week's wages to any man or woman or child at the end of a week? What have they done themselves? If they haven't done a lot, it's hard for them to know the problem that people in business, and I'm talking about predominantly small business people, how can they really understand the problems that people have if they don't have them themselves? So when I hear the Taoiseach thinking that it's a good thing to have vulture funds coming in here and buying up massive loan books and then being in charge of those people's destiny, I'd call it, at a time when those families mightn't even know that this has happened. That's horrific. And it's a real big worry. And again, coming back to us as politicians, we're dealing with these people on a daily basis at our clinics. And the upset and the trauma that we see being caused to families and to their financial situations, it's no wonder that us and others have brought motions like this before the House. But what we want to see you do, Minister, is bring in legislation that has teeth. Bring in legislation that will have power. Bring in legislation that will be meaningful to the people who feel vulnerable in our society at present. Because it's our duty. That's what we are there for. As elected representatives, we are there to help those people. And that's why we would ask you tonight, not just to pay lip service to this motion, not just to say, well, look, I'm taking it on board, and come up with, like you have, a counter proposal to what we're suggesting and trying to water it down and trying to change it. We're trying here tonight to be decisive and to be firm in that we are saying, as a government, you and the Dáil should be united behind the people who are trying to work, trying to pay the debt that they've incurred, and pay their loan in a respectable fashion. That's all these people are trying to do, Minister. They're only trying to get on in life. They're trying to rear their children, educate them in the best way they can, and all they want is a fair crack at the whip. But they certainly don't want to see billionaires coming into this country with vulture funds and take you over, and without proper legislation being in place to protect them. One thing that I can't let go here tonight, Minister, is what is happening with what I would call our pillar banks. And that is the fact, and it actually, not many things would drive me mad, but when I see these ads saying, well, we are backing Brave, and we're putting workers first, and this rubbish by banks trying to give the impression that they're loaning out money at present. They're not. And I want to name one bank in particular, and that is AIB Bank. It is actually impossible for anybody to face AIB Bank and get money from them at present. Every obstacle that can be put in a person's way is put in their way, and they're making it impossible for young people, middle-aged people, or any person to borrow money from them. And you know, I actually don't have a problem with that happening if they were to admit it, and if they were to come out tomorrow morning and say, well, AIB Bank and others are shut down. We're not going to loan people money. We're going to make it impossible for you. So please don't waste your time coming to us, because that is what they're doing. And to be honest, I am sick of seeing this happening to people. I'm sick of the stories that I'm being told where people are being fooled and codded up to their eyeballs by people in suits telling them all the reasons why they can't give them money. Because remember, those banks wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the taxpayers of Ireland. Those banks wouldn't be in business if it wasn't for the taxpayers of Ireland. The people that are in charge of giving out money, they wouldn't be in the jobs they're in only for the taxpayers of Ireland. And here they are trying to cod the people with their fancy slogans and their fancy ads, and they put up a picture of a farmer and a tractor and a plough behind it, and we're backing Brave. It's absolute nonsense. And I would love to see that being put to bed, and let the message go out. Our banks that we supported are now turning their backs on us, and they're not giving money. The thought of a person, you know, a nice, young, respectable family starting out, or a young couple, or a young individual, maybe between 20 or 30 years of age, saying, well, I must go to the bank now and see, would they give me a loan, a mortgage, would they give me a loan for a business? They may as well be, they're just wasting their time, because there's nothing, absolutely nothing being done to help them. Only the fancy ads on the television and the newspapers, and open the windows of the banks telling the people, oh, come on in because we are lending. They're not lending. Maybe they're lending to millionaires. Maybe they're lending to big business. And maybe that's why at the end of the year they can say, oh, well, we've backed this industry or that industry by so many hundreds of millions or billions or whatever they want to say. But all I know is from the ordinary person's point of view, from the person that we represent, ordinary people, they are not lending money to those people. I want to condemn what the government has done. We've had calls for many, many years from myself and others, including people like Tom O'Callaghan from the Independent Postmasters Union of Ireland, whereby we were looking for proper community banking to be put in place. And when I say community banking, I mean banking that any profits that would accrue from it, that we would look at the models that were used in other parts of the world, where the profits could go back into those rural communities. It was sensible. There was nothing wrong with it, but did you support it? No, you did not. You went around the house in every way you could. You went around the dresser and around the table to avoid it. You came up with every suggestion in the world except what we wanted.
Swings and roundabouts. Give up the swings.
And
Healy-Rae is well capable of making it.
And I have to say that I was terribly disappointed that you would not take that on board. Because when we looked at what happened in other parts of the world, and we didn't actually need to go any further than look at England and Scotland and Wales, and to see the amount of post offices that they lost, and compare that to other countries where they brought in proper community banking and where they saved their post offices. But we wore ourselves to a thread trying to tell you and other members of your government this. And we did everything we could to persuade you. And did you listen? No, you didn't. And what I predicted many years ago inside in this house has come to pass very sadly, where we haven't lost 10 or 20, but we've lost hundreds of post offices. And I can say to you with absolute confidence, we're going to lose hundreds more because of government policy and government inaction. And when we lose those post offices, which there was no need of doing, because we could have kept people banking in their local communities at a time when the pillar banks, as we call them, and I'd love to see that name being done away with too, because they're the pillars of nothing, because a pillar to me is something that holds up something, and that's something that's strong and that's underneath you. But our pillar banks are doing nothing to help our people, are doing nothing to come under them and support them, only trying to make fools out of them. And I really don't like that. So look, I'm very glad to be able to support this this private member's motion here tonight. And again, I thank the people in Deputy Matty McGrath's office who did a lot of background work in preparing it. Thank you, Lescom Colin.